My record was 5 wins, 4 losses, and that's purely because I was learning on the trot. Like I didn't have any amateur MMA fights, so would learn from fight to fight. And in that first year, I had some ridiculous amount of fights for a 1 year period where there's not really much time to learn. But in saying that, like I was learning as much as I could. But they believed in me. They worked with me, and they respect me, and they've definitely looked after me in the 5 years that I've been signed with them.
And so, when did you know you could make a career out of this? And I only say this because you pretty much came in, I won't say before, it was pretty much the same year as the Ronda Rousey effect, right? So right now, like obviously women's MMA is definitely up there. You've got a lot of high, whether it be Cyborg, whether it be Nunes, whether it be, Joanna.
Yeah.
But it all sort of started with Ronda.
Yeah, for sure.
And obviously, now you see a lot of these gyms. I deal a lot to do with the Winter Warrior program, which is obviously getting amateurs or people with no experience in, and they do this 6-month fight camp and get to have a fight at the end. And their numbers are literally 50-50 now, like male to female, if not sometimes even a little more female than male.
Yeah.
But when you started, there was no Ronda Rousey yet. Or I think she started 2012 as well. So she was there, but I'm saying the Ronda Rousey effect hadn't taken hold yet. So when did you realize, I guess, you could make a career out of this?
Well, it's funny because I literally started MMA to keep. So I actually started doing wrestling training and jiu-jitsu just to mix up my boxing training because, when I turned professional, my first 3 fights had happened, but then it was just this long stint, and there was a long period of time between each of the fights too. Whereas I'd come from being an amateur where you'd fight, every second weekend, or you'd go up to tournaments and you potentially fight 3 times in 1 week, the Friday, the Saturday, make the finals, fight Sunday. So I was very active, a lot of exhibition fights or this and that. So, in a 1 year period, you can have a heap of fights, whereas as a professional, you only have maybe 1 or 2 fights if you're lucky, sort of thing. So I think it had been about 10 months in between fight number 1 and 2, and I was like, oh well, all this training. So my coach at the time was like, why don't you mix things up? And I looked at wrestling and BJJ, and I was like, well, that's way too confronting. Like for me, I didn't like it being inside even boxing close. The wrestling and the dirty boxing, the phone booth fighting and stuff like that. Like I was a long range fighter. In and out. So the idea of that, I didn't like it at all, but he's like, it's all right. It's, because at the time I only had one training partner and my coach, and he's like, well, it's just us, we train together. So it's not like you'd be walking into a gym and training with someone you don't know. So, obviously a lot of confronting positions for somebody new to the sport. Whereas now, I'll literally walk into any gym, tap in and then do a round and not even think anything of it. You don't even know the person, you don't even know their name, and at the end of it you thank them and introduce yourself or whatever. But at the beginning, for an outsider looking in on the sport, it's it's a bit crazy. But I started it and had the first 14 months worth of fighting. I got signed to Bellator, and even then, flying over there, I was still taking MMA as a side sport. So it wasn't until I won that first fight on Bellator and, obviously got paid a lot more money than I'd ever made in any of my professional career, which still wasn't a lot back then anyway, but compared to I remember one of the fight promotions here in Australia, I fought 3 times in one night on a gauntlet type thing, and I made $100, and my parking back at Sydney Airport was $170, so I was actually in the minus after that.
Which is crazy, right? That is, it's just, and I get it too. The problem is like
the money's not here on the local scene, and that's it. Promotions rely on ticket sales and this and that, and this is something that I was talking on another podcast earlier in the week. Is just that you can't go into this sport even now I still work a full-time job, and I've got other side things with my mentoring, coaching, this and that for income, but that's purely because I'm trying to get ahead in life, with my kids. I'm not going to rely on going fight to fight and provide for my family in that sense.